Hello, welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your host, Eric Tait, brought to you by the good graces of Manhattan Neighborhood Network and EVT Educational Productions. And for this edition, I have two longtime friends and colleagues, and I'll let them self-intro. To my far left is...
I'm Michelle Materre. I'm a professor of media studies and film at the New School, and I also host a radio show and film series called Creatively Speaking.
And hi, I'm Clairesa Clay. I'm the co-founder of the Luminal Theater.
And welcome to you both, and I'm glad we'll start right off the top with co-founder of the Luminal Theater. Tell us a little bit about this new venture, Clairesa.
Yes, it's been it's overwhelmingly exciting. It's a MicroCinema in Bedford Stuyvesant on Tompkins Avenue between Hancock and Jefferson. And we are focused on African diaspora films and other films, but primarily African diaspora.
So, you know, we've been in this film distribution, film production, documentaries, fiction, as people of color for a long time.
Yes.
I mean, I don't even want to go back into the history, but something must have driven you to decide to open up a distribution house, a local theater. Tell us some more.
That's my own personal goal as someone that wanted to be a filmmaker full-time. I thought distribution was the problem and looked at Oscar Micheaux, even Master P, that they self-distribute. So you need somewhere to distribute your films, and the only way you can do it, not someone else, you have to do it. So this gives the opportunity to do that.
Little history. Oscar Micheaux. Michelle, as a media studies professor, tell us a little bit about who Oscar Micheaux is and why that's a track record to emulate.
Well, Oscar Micheaux is considered the father of independent African-American cinema, and he has a track record of not only producing his own work, but of going door to door with reels of film under his arm and distributing it around the country. A great mentor of both Clairesa's and mine is Pearl Bowser, who is the preeminent scholar on Oscar Micheaux. Has two books on his work, but I think he sort of laid the groundwork for the work that we're all doing now in terms of how we do have to do it ourselves. Don't wait for someone else to validate what we're doing, just do it ourselves.
Micheaux said, we can't wait for Hollywood to tell our stories.
Correct.
We can't wait for other houses to distribute our stories. So he actually started a network of outlets to help show the films that he was scraping the money together and producing way back when. You also mentioned Master P. It's another genre altogether, but the same example of...
The same example. He did it out of the back of his trunk,
Right.
and he sold like 100,000 units of his film or
his initials albums.
It's like,
yes.
This is the only way we can do it if we go directly to our community. You can't go to a distribution house that has no connection to our community to say, oh, can you distribute our film? It's not going to work, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
We now also have the online technology to bring it to broader communities, international communities, that we are also touching on now with our work, and building audiences around the world, which I think is also legitimizing what you're doing in theaters and what we're doing in media networks and radio.
So this is so new that your kickoff, when this airs next Monday, which is, I believe, what's today? Today is the 6th, about the 9th, no, the 10th, Monday the 10th, you will be just about a little less than a month old.
Yes, it's now a week and a half old.
So you'll be 2 weeks old.
Yes, a new baby, but the baby is flying. The outpour of support from the filmmakers has been enormous. The community coming out to see the films and the discussion. That's the part that I like. Like Michelle was talking about media criticism. To hear our community ask questions, refer to different parts of the film is so enormously valuable.
So you're actually, I plan to be there probably tonight, folks, just because I missed the original opening, even though I intended to. But I had relatives in town and it got complicated, but no excuse. But from what I'm gathering, based on what you're saying and what I read earlier, you're doing more than just projecting the film, sending people home. You're actually having the filmmakers basically interact with their audience as at least part of the initial experience.
Yes. That is, looking at you, Eric, and I'm thinking about Saint. It was something that we did at BDC where he would have from the most famous William Greaves documentarian to a new filmmaker. We would see the film, and then afterwards we get to discuss, we get to dissect, we have a Q&A. It's the same way at our theater. You get to see the film, and a lot of times the director is there. Last week for Naked Acts, Bridget Davis, the director, and Jake Ann Jones, the main actress, was there, and then I was a production assistant on that also.
Oh, see?
From
back in the day. And the response was enormous. I loved how they encouraged a black woman filmmaker, to keep on making films, which was a positive message.
Let me ask you a question. It sounds as if this is almost going to be a communal kind of experience. So it's not so much first run, even though that would be part of the mix. It's good films, no matter how old or how new.
Yes.
And it's films dealing with the African diaspora primarily, but any good film that wants to reach our audience, you're more than willing to show.
Yes.
Tell me more.
I'm raised in a Baptist church in Brooklyn. I had them come to the theater, and I showed Still Bill. And the response is, I have one member, he stutters. So he to see, and he's an actor. So to see Bill Withers talk about his stuttering, he never got an idea that it extends further than just him. So that was
an eye-opening experience.
Very eye-opening experience.
For our viewers, Still Bill is a relatively recent documentary that's been made on singer-songwriter Bill Withers.
Yeah.
I don't remember who the director is. If you guys can share it with our audience, feel free.
I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Sometimes if we don't come prepared, then memory banks don't kick in. But it's a I've only seen excerpts of it.
It's
a phenomenal. From what I've seen, it looks like a really fine piece of work.
I think I've watched it like 4 or 5 times.
Okay. All right.
It's amazing to see the gift of Bill Withers, and there are also things and issues that we need to talk about in our community that we're not fully, not to say just Bill Withers, but to say about mental health, about careers in the arts and surviving in the arts from not just your first song, but for like 4 or 5 generations, like Janet Jackson. You're like, oh my God, she's young, but she's been in business, has a body of work. And how do you sustain that? How do you sustain that as a filmmaker?
How do you talk a little bit, Michelle, about how difficult it is. We'll get around to the distribution, but how difficult it is just for people of color just to get the backing and the funding. Because right now, Haile Gerima is on a Kickstarter campaign to raise funds for his next film, and that's one of our preeminent filmmakers.
Yes.
And he's having a hard time getting money. What can the rest of us, not with his reputation, do so that we can get our stories told and out to our people?
Well, I think it is telling to see that someone like Haile Gerima, with his stature and his experience, to still have to do Kickstarter campaigns, to still have to ask people to donate for people to still not even know who he is. I actually had Haile at the New School several years back as a residence. We have a director in residence program, and it was the first time we even had anyone of color. I hate to say, at the New School as a director in residence. But this is what we're up against on a regular basis. You know, we have Julie Dash, we have Charles Burnett, we have Nima Burnett, we have all of these amazing filmmakers who have made, you know, several films, have a huge body of work, but whose work is always a struggle to get made, to the next film to get made. And unfortunately, it hasn't changed too much. Kickstarter has presented some new possibilities. It's also helped develop audiences where we may not have had them before. But I do believe that the key goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's like doing it within our own communities. I think the tremendous outpouring of the community at the Luminal Theater is indicative of how much we still need to see images of ourselves, positive images of ourselves represented in mainstream media. But if we don't see it in mainstream media, we're going to find where they are. Same thing with audiences we get for Creatively Speaking. I think people are anxious and willing to go wherever they can find something alternative to what we're finding in mainstream.
Can I also add, I just called Michelle. Michelle just did a program at the Lincoln Center that I call a PhD program. The films that they show, it was the level of studying like a PhD, the images, the positive films, the stories. Exactly. I was like, this is a PhD. I had the chance to be there. I'm like, I'm getting a degree here.
Yes, I think I was on one of those panels.
Yes, you were. Yes, you was.
No, that was a phenomenal retrospective, folks. But what fails to happen is a lot of good work is done, and then it never gets distributed. It's never seen. There were at least 2, if not more. I know for sure one that had never had a theatrical release prior to that retrospective, and it was a phenomenal work. On par with on par with anything I have seen in the last 15, 20 years. I mean anything, okay? But this was a film by a black filmmaker.
Female.
Yes, and it was just remarkable, but unsung and unheard of unless you were in the industry and had worked on the film. And it was interesting to see in the credits how many of my colleagues still in the business who worked on that film. Who went on to...
We had everyone who was still around who had participated in the program that we represented with the films, which was quite an accomplishment.
And because of that lack of exposure and lack of places for it, I'm so glad that, and that's why Clairesa Clay is here today, and you are watching this on Monday the 10th of August, because this is a new venture, but it's in part of an old tradition of us trying to do for ourselves, to help our own and to help ourselves. And tell us about your co-founder and how you all came together and what the plans are. Are you holding these films over more than one day, or tell us more?
Okay. First, the founder or co-founder is Curtis Caesar John. I think you've worked with him.
Curtis is one of my long time. I don't want to say proteges, but
he called you his mentee. He called you his first mentee.
The world is a small place, folks. I wasn't even aware that Curtis was the co-founder of the Luminal Theater. Curtis worked on Then I'll Be Free to Travel Home in its early stages as a researcher. I'm telling you, that's how small the world is. That's, of course, folks talk about Then I'll Be Free. That's one of those historical documentaries that talks about who we are as a people. The plug is www.evted.org. Go check it out, because it's something you should get and know about. But Curtis is a fine filmmaker in his own right today. So talk some more about what your vision and Curtis's vision is for the space.
Last year, around August, talked to Curtis about doing a film festival. And Curtis said, well, actually, I want to open a MicroCinema. So I sent him some ideas, and he said, well, you could be artistic director. And from there, we just made the Luminal Theater from August last year to now 1 year.
1
And
year.
we got it up.
There you go.
That's
How about
fabulous.
that?
I
Yeah.
love,
Yeah.
I love it.
Going.
There are
Yeah.
people who talk and there are people who do. Okay, I've been lucky in my life to be associated with a lot of folk who
Do.
talk about what they're going to do and then do it.
Amen.
So yeah, part of it is you can't just dream it silently in a corner somewhere and expect it to happen. If you dream it, talk it up. After you talk it up, make it happen.
Yes.
Do. Don't just talk. So, I mean, we've probably got another 12 minutes or so. We can talk some more about, because I don't think we've exhausted this bit about community outreach and community coming together. Michelle, what do you see in how the community can get behind the Luminal Theater? Because, you
And
know...
Michelle is on our board.
Okay, well, that's one way to get on the board.
They're not letting me get away too easily here. No, I think, one of the things that Clairesa and I talk about all the time is the fact that we have such an amazing array of work that doesn't get the exposure that it needs. And the filmmakers, most of whom live right here in New York.
Yes.
So the fact that there are people who live in our communities that we don't even know that they're filmmakers. We don't even know that they're visual artists. We don't even know that they're musicians. That we need to be more familiar with who we have right next door to us, who we can talk to, whose work we can highlight, rather than going outside of our community. We don't need to do that. We, coming from Chicago, a place where, I never had to step outside of my community growing up for anything. It's something that I find unique in a way, unfortunately unique in a way, but Brooklyn still has it, especially Bed-Stuy, and I'm very glad that the theater is going to be in Bed-Stuy. We have Mist Harlem, which we're doing Creatively Speaking back in September. We'll be back up there at Mist Harlem, but we definitely still need Brooklyn outlets as well, because we still have that sense of community there.
Yes. We showed I don't know how to say Karen's last name. Karen, she's in BDC. Karen.
Afundikwa.
The
Yes.
Price of Memory.
Yes.
Oh my God.
We're going to show that at Mist as well.
Oh, that is a phenomenal to talk about Jamaican reparations from by suing the Queen.
Yes.
Phenomenal. And then she does the history of slavery in Jamaica, brings it up to contemporary time. It's like, no, we're still pursuing for reparations for this reason. Phenomenal.
Yeah, we did an early, I guess, preview review of Price of Memory, because I got to see the rough cut of it, and she was getting ready to launch it at about the time that Professor Gates was doing his the African Americans Many Rivers to Cross, and the difference in storytelling and power and telling it from the real side, from the real experience of Price of Memory and Africans Many Rivers to Cross was so stark, so nice. Like I had to do the review and do the comment, even though the film was just coming out, wasn't quite ready, and I think it had just launched into one of his early festivals. And I did a comparison on Media Watch, Bob Anthony, myself, and
the history. She
just
I
nails
turned
it.
to her and said that you are a scholar. She said all this reading she's done, all this. She actually goes to the places. That's a scholar.
No. I remember writing a letter of recommendation for Karen on one of the graduate courses that she was working on, which was part of what she was doing as part of some of this research, I'm sure. And she got the position. And so I said to myself, good, because that's a deserving filmmaker who needs to get that next leg up. And so, Price of Memory is just a phenomenal film.
And we need the community to support this
Yeah,
film
they need
because
to
she's
know
done
it.
the work.
They need to know it. They need to support it. We're going to have to talk about some other film festival, because remember we did the St. Clair Bourne Film Festival as part of the 350th anniversary, and my film curator sitting right next to me, folks, did an outstanding job, and one of our other outstanding co-workers on that festival sitting next to her. I think next spring I'm going to have to do something with you guys to do another St. Clair Bourne kind of, let's do that again, because it's how many years, 2008 to now? It's time for another one. We'll tie it into that other media center thing I'm working on.
Okay.
We just make it a regional thing.
And it'll be the 20th anniversary of Creatively Speaking next year. So
All right, so we can
Yes.
make that all work. Yes, we're going to make that happen, folks. You heard it here first on Media Watch. Speaking of our images and telling our story and what's going on in the media, I have to, we're taping this, folks. We're pre-taping. It airs on Monday the 10th, but we're taping on Thursday. And this particular Thursday happens to be the Thursday of the first, quote, Republican presidential candidates debate. Yes. I don't know how 10 people are going to debate, but that's going to happen sometime later tonight, or may have started already by the time we're taping. But the interesting thing about it is we don't even want to get into the debate. We don't want to get into why it's too early to be doing any of this stuff on a presidential election that doesn't take place for another year and a half. But what we would like to at least talk about is one of the individuals that half the media really don't know how to place this individual. Matter of fact, Huffington Post, the aggregators of news that claim to be a now news organization, said that they weren't even going to cover this individual in politics. They were going to cover him in entertainment. We're speaking about the one and only Donald Trump. And so what my reason for at least touching on Donald Trump, because they got 17 declared candidates in the Republican race right now, and it's only August of 2015. And so it's just too early to even be talking about real presidential candidates. But because Donald Trump has actually filed and done all the right paperwork and said he's going to be a presidential candidate, not like in the past when he'd talk about it and then back out, then how the media treats him once he becomes an official candidate is crucial to me. As a media studies professor, tell me a little bit about, and you just kick it off. What are they doing right or wrong, and where do you think they should be, or where are they falling down as far as treating this man as a candidate or not?
Oh, I have very mixed feelings about even talking about him on the air, giving him any more play than he already has received, because I think 3/4 of it is a publicity stunt. I truly do. I think, he's losing out in Atlantic City. He's losing out in Las Vegas. The Miss Universe pageant got canned because of his ridiculous remarks. So it's they say no publicity is bad publicity. However, the fact that we even give credence to someone like him as a serious political candidate, I find very disheartening in terms of how we as Americans, we as supposedly intelligent people, or the first world country, blah, 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 even go into thinking about this man as a potential leader of our country. I think this is
scary.
It is very scary and very disgusting.
Clairesa, in your other life, you have to teach young people, right?
Yes.
And at civics, history, you even touch on things like immigration, and because you got a lot of students that are coming in from outside of this country, they're coming to your school. Tell me a little bit about how you would try to put this supposed candidate into perspective for some of your students.
Came finally. Yes, I like this. Finally, got a great response. I will show Central Park 5 over and over and over to my students so they can see the history of Donald Trump and responses to at that time when he took out the New York Times.
One full page ad. All right. And the full page ad, was in response to the Central Park 5 case.
Yes.
History, some of you remember, these 5 young men were targeted as the, quote, rapists of this white female jogger in Central Park back in the early 80s, right? And they basically got railroaded, but in the course of their trial, Donald Trump took out this full-page ad, bring back the death penalty, blah, 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 da, da, da,
Call them names.
Animals, and they were wilding in the park, blah, 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 blah. Interesting thing, it turned out, as that documentary showed quite well, they had really done nothing. Somebody else had confessed, and the city of New York had to do serious mea culpas.
Yes.
It was
and
just,
money.
Here's the point, it took them years to finally
they served full sentences. The gentleman served full sentences.
That's terrible.
Their conviction had to be vacated, and the city had to pay millions of dollars. I think $41 million. And the interesting thing about Donald Trump, when a reporter went back to talk to him recently about did he have any regrets for that misinterpretation, he said no. No. And there's an actual quote, direct quote from Donald Trump, where he not only doubles down, he triples down, saying they were wilding somewhere else in the park, assaulting other people in the park. So they got away with walking away with $41 million. I mean, so this guy who claims not to be a racist, but as last Saturday, August 1st, New York Times front page actually had a great background piece that dealt with Donald Trump and who he actually is historically. And the headline was something like, politics or presidential run may be new to Donald Trump, but not use of racially tinged language.
Correct.
And they basically analyzed how he would use race and race baiting anytime it suited him if it was to his advantage. Against the Native Americans when he was worried about them doing casino business that was competing with his New Jersey casino.
Yeah.
Against any, the whole thing about immigration and the Mexicans. This guy who claims not to be a racist will use racial language, racial I mean, I'm at a loss for words, but the language that cost him the NBC backing for The Apprentice and made them drop your USA, Miss USA, Miss Universal. That kind of language is not anathema to Donald Trump, and he'll use it at the drop of a hat.
Yes.
So what scares me is using that kind of language and doubling down and tripling down. You would think in a political country that's more savvy, that supposedly is post-racial, would cost him. Well, where's Donald Trump in the polls these days?
Unfortunately, way up there, and it's a very sad statement as well in terms of where our country is headed potentially.
It's no post-racial anything. Our president is.
I was being facetious.
I know you was. I was like.
Look, I worry about the state of our politics because the pundits are saying, well, he's speaking for the disaffected. But nobody defines who these disaffected are. And so if he's speaking to the disaffected, what is it they're disaffected about?
Is it the rich that he's a part of? I mean,
I have no way of knowing.
I mean,
what you do and what Eric does and what I do even more important.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, we have to analyze and actually talk about it. Well, I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank Michelle Materre, Clairesa Clay, and you folks for joining us on this edition of Media Watch. And we'll catch you the next time. Thank you, MNN, and thank you, EVT Educational Productions.